What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. So it's been a couple of days since I've uploaded a video, and I did make this tweet a couple of days ago in regards to what people's opinions were on the overall New Year's celebration. So the New Year's celebration, I feel like, has kind of like come and gone at this point. Like, yes, like the Kizuna and the TM and stuff, they are still like kind of related to being the New Year's celebration, but I feel like at this point the celebration has come and gone, and I really wanted people's opinions about what they thought about the celebration as a whole, you know, whether it be the characters, the campaign that surrounds it. I wanted people's opinions on it. Now, just generically from my point of view, I felt like the characters were a little underwhelming in terms of character selection and character design. They definitely could have done things a little bit differently that I think would have been far superior. But I will say that the campaign, the social media campaigns, and all of the things to kind of get people to log in were actually very generous. The amount of rainbow gems that we got during the celebration was pretty absurd. I was definitely not expecting that. I kind of talked about it briefly on the latest Good, Great, Perfect podcast, which should be live right now. So go ahead and check it if you guys haven't seen it yet. But in that, I kind of talked about, in part one of the Sugo Fest, I can't remember how many gems I had saved up. I had like 500 something gems saved up. I spent them all on part one, and because I got really lucky, obviously, on part one, that was a big deal. But I think I ended up being on like 20 rainbow gems or something. And at this current point in time, basically not doing any pulls. I think I did a couple of discounts on like the TM banners and stuff, but nothing crazy. I have like nearly 800 gems at this point, mainly due to the fact that we had like all the social media campaigns. We had like 150 gems with those 50 gems per day for like part 1, part 2, part 3, whatever it was. We also had like the special edition grand party, which gave us like a ton of rainbow gems as well. So that aspect was good, but it just feels like the character side of things could have been definitely dealt a little bit differently. But let's see what people's opinions are. So Red Halo Gaming, which is another Treasure Cruise content creator, go ahead and check him out if you guys haven't done so already. But he said that the gems were generous, which I completely agree with. Characters, the selection was boring, but the designs were good. So the designs were okay. I feel like Luffy had a cool design, but the execution wasn't the best. Sabo, I think, could have been done a little bit better, and I think Ace and Whitebeard had a really good design, but it's just the fact that the characters that kind of surround him, the characters they want you to use, they needed a little bit more support, unfortunately. Content, nothing new. That's completely true. We really didn't get anything brand new. I think it would have been nice if we got an arena, a clash. We say that basically with every celebration because we actually like that content and we just never get it. We didn't get a new Grand Voyage for New Year's. We didn't get a new Forest, a new Garp challenge. Like, nothing new. It was just the same celebration. We get a Blitz battle, of course, but nothing that great. Campaigns, good enough, but nothing fun. Hype, not hyped. Quality of life improvements, great. And they did kind of touch up on it in the most recent community letter where they mentioned that there's going to be some quality of life updates coming soon. So definitely looking forward to that. Alright, my man Stump, another Treasure Cruise content creator. I'm sure you guys know exactly who this guy is. Give me more units like Ace and Whitebeard. The concept behind using units under them and getting extra effects is amazing. Overall as a unit though, super annoying to get into their dual form, but can bring a lot of power in the boosted meta. Sabo is better than first thought. Yeah, Sabo is an interesting one because Sabo is really going to be powerful when we see more characters or more pieces of content with class weakness on them, because the ability that Sabo can provide is like an absurd damage bump. It's pretty crazy how good he can be, but if the enemy doesn't have weakness class, he's kind of useless. But it's such a weird situation with him because if they do have it, he's like one of the best units to use. If he doesn't have it, he's kind of pointless. It's weird. But Ace and Whitebeard, yeah, we kind of talked about it, but Ace and Whitebeard, fantastic design, but again, execution is a little choppy, mainly due to the fact that the characters that they want you to use with him are kind of non-existent. They did try and give a little bit of support, giving some of those older Whitebeard characters some level limit breaks, but they're really not that good still. And Whitebeard and Ace only boost Powerhouse and Fighter characters, yet the characters that they all gave buffs to, like half of them aren't even Powerhouse or Fighter, so it's just really, really dumb. We got LNRD saying, so bad, Luffy is only for damage. Yeah, Luffy isn't really utility focused. He has some pieces of utility, like he's not useless, I guess, but you know, he is mainly focused on damage. I guess speaking about Sabo again, Sabo does have use cases even if he doesn't have weakness class active because of the special bind removal and the bone removal. So at least he has that. Like 10 turns of special bind removal is pretty useful. And Sabo does get access to his EX super while he's a crewmate. So those are all other reasons why Sabo could kind of be useful. Ace Whitebeard's kind of interesting. Sabo, good utility, but the buff he provides is bad. There's no characters that have both damage and good utility. If they do Luffy what they did with Whitebeard, like if you use Azora special, he gets HP guard and so on. Yeah, something like that with Luffy would have been nice. Again, I made a video about it a couple of days ago talking about how they could add like categories into the game. I think that would like just add a new layer of nuance that would be a really nice, refreshing way to play Treasure Cruise. So hopefully they go down that kind of route in the future. What I will say though is that there is going to be a new maintenance. I don't know if you guys saw it, but I think it's on the 20th of January. Yeah, I'll pull it up here real quick so you guys can see it. If I zoom in, you can see that there's going to be a new update, and during this very short maintenance period, they're going to have like a new backup method, which I think is a really good thing because people still have issues with that. You can use 999 items for PvP power, which again is kind of nice, some bug fixes. But this is interesting, new features for new units. So they typically do this right before a new batch release, which introduces some new mechanics. It could be new gimmicks and content. So the end of month batch might have something new with it. We'll have to wait and see exactly what they have planned in regards to that. But again, like pretty exciting stuff. We'll have to wait and see. The Ace Whitebeard unit that boosts Whitebeard pirates is pretty sick. Would like to see more themed units in the future, maybe give a little extra boost if the crew is using the corresponding ship as well. Example, Moby Dick with the Whitebeard pirates. That's interesting. I didn't really think about that, but I guess I don't think that's really necessary, because I mean, like the Whitebeard pirate ship did get a ship special recently, and the Whitebeard captain ability has the effect where at the start of the quest your ship special gets maxed. So I guess technically like that is some kind of synergy, I guess, but not really. But yeah, I think most people kind of have the same agreement that the design idea of Ace of Whitebeard is really good. It's just that the characters that they want us to use are just not that good. So we'll see. I think there is a lot of potential. Sabo and Luffy seem okay for future content. Ace Whitebeard seem better overall. Sabo could see less play because of his kit. Again, he could see more play because of his kit as well. It really depends on the content that we get given. Will really determine how much use Sabo sees. We'll see. For Rumble, the roles are reversed. Sabo and Luffy are amazing. Ace Whitebeard need a specific team to work well. That's true. I feel like, yeah, Ace and Whitebeard are pretty good in Rumble, but you just need good units to surround him with. Whereas, like, Luffy can basically be put on any half-decent team, and he's going to be pretty good. Sabo is a really nice support unit for the int teams. He's really, really strong. We got Drew Senpai saying, did the pulls up to the 50-50 on part 1, then dumped to rest into part 2. Didn't pull any of the new units and proceeded to miss out on the most of the content due to not having the team as classic. Yeah, that's pretty rough. I mean, that's a pretty typical Treasure Cruise experience. I know that a lot of people have this kind of situation where, you know, you'll do like a ton of pulls, you just don't get anything. It's happened to me before. I will say that it is annoying how they kind of structured on part 1. I think they did do it a little bit differently in this part 1, didn't they? Where you were guaranteed one of the new units on part 1. Or am I tripping? I could be tripping, but yeah, either way, like that's One Piece Treasure Cruise in a nutshell, right? Yeah, that sucks. Cayman says strong characters but limited to small pool of crews to build with. It could be that Bandai is planning to release more new legends that could go along with them later, make us keep pulling. That is a pretty good tinfoil hat theory, I feel. Because the thing is this whole New Year celebration was kind of buffing the fighter class, and to be honest, the fighter class desperately needed buffs. But to use a whole New Year celebration on a class that isn't that good does make it feel a little weird. I definitely agree with that. But you're right. They could definitely just release more characters in the future that just indirectly support the New Year's stuff to kind of incentivize people to pull for them. It's not a terrible theory, honestly. Zora says, opinion on the new units. Gear change Luffy, brilliant idea, but horrible design. Yeah, I think a lot of people really wanted the idea of kind of like what we had with the quick Gear 4 Luffy. For those who don't know, it was a quick Sugo Fest exclusive. Let me go ahead and find him real quick. It was this guy right here. So the way that this guy worked is that he had like a base captain ability. I think it was always in Gear 2, I think. And then the way that it would work is every time you consume a recovery slot, or Luffy himself taps perfect while he's a captain, it charges his gauge. And basically, once you reach a certain gauge, you're allowed to activate Gear 3, and then once the gauge was maxed, you could activate Gear 4, and then if you have consumed a certain amount of recovery slots, and you have max gauge, you get the Tankman ability instead of Luffy Bound Man. So it's kind of like he eats too many recovery slots, he becomes Tankman, and he basically does more damage, and he's way more tankier. So it's kind of cool that you can do that, and there are actual benefits to using Gear 2 versus Gear 3, where like Gear 3 only gets like the big buffs after you hit 2 consecutive perfects, whereas like the Gear 2 was more like consistent damage. but sometimes you actually wanted to not do damage at the start of the chain, so you could like do a little bit of stall and stuff. They made different slots beneficial as well. Like there were actual differences between gear 2, gear 3, gear 4, etc., and you could switch between them whenever you want. However, if you go ahead and pivot to what the new Luffy is, this new Luffy is just like the base Luffy, and every time you get a gear upgrade, it's just enhanced damage reduction, healing, stuff like that. And there's no real, like, you can't go back and forth between the different forms. And I think that would have been a really good change, where we could actually choose which form we wanted to go in, and there are different benefits for doing it. And also, I will say that the requirements that you have to fulfill in order to reach all of these different abilities is pretty harsh, because you really need to rely on having these super effects, characters that have EX supers or super types, super classes that can activate while they're in the crewmate state are so valuable to this Luffy. And it just feels like the design-wise is a little clunky, especially when you have a look at the super special. You need 3 Straw Hats on the crew, or transform into Gear 5 state, which is pretty difficult to do. So it basically means, like, you know, have other EX supers to trigger Gear 5, or, you know, you could have like the 3 Straw Hats, which allows you to use this effect. And this effect is very powerful. So yeah, it just design-wise and execution is a little clunky. Ace and Whitebeard, easily the best of the batch for the design. Would love more units like him. Sabo looked great on paper, but the weakness class kind of ruined him. His EX Super and Captain are still solid, yeah, for sure. They all have their use cases. So again, I think most people have the same idea, where Ace and Whitebeard are the best. It's super handy unit. I mean, Ace and Whitebeard also have the attack down removal in this special, which is kind of cool. I will say Ace and Whitebeard's Captain, while it does have the abilities depending on your Whitebeard Pirate commanders, the actual utility in their Captain is really not that good. It removes 10 turns of special use limit, which is pretty redundant in most cases. Like, it's not a very common debuff. Whereas in terms of captain abilities, like, Sabo is probably the best in terms of utility. Luffy does have paralysis removal, but there are a lot of hoops you have to jump through in order to get that to trigger. Whereas Sabo just says, you know what? Don't give me despair. Don't give me special bind, and I'm good. And he can remove the special bind with his special, of course, which is really cool. Sabo is great in Rumble, synergized well with versus Shanks, and Luffy is a great all-round unit with some cool mechanics. Should overhaul majority of the old raids and support the new characters on the other side. Old characters should get the same treatment as the Whitebeard commanders. Yeah, 100%. They need to do that. There are so many older characters in this game that are useless, especially a lot of the free-to-play units that are still accessible in some way, shape, or form, and they should definitely go out of their way to give some of these older units some buffs. They don't have to make them amazing, but at least give them some kind of unique ability that they can get access to. But unfortunately, they just don't. I really would love them to do stuff like that. Opinions on the celebration. The social media campaign was great. Bandai very generous with gems. Yep, definitely. The content non-existent as usual. There was nothing to do. PKA is not content. The Blitz was the most dead Blitz we've ever had. Barely anyone playing. The Blitz was pretty rough. Yeah, honestly, the Blitz was pretty bad. A very lackluster New Year's celebration. Yeah, it just feels like the content-wise wasn't that great. But like the social media campaigns to get people into the game was cool. The Sugo Fest itself was pretty typical from big celebration Sugo Fest that we've seen. And the characters, while like Luffy, Ace, and Sabo are incredibly popular characters in the One Piece community, I just think that they could have done a little bit of a better job in terms of maybe the unit selection could have been a little bit different, but especially unit design. I feel like they could have done a little bit better job there. Cody says Ace Whitebeard was the most interesting unit of the whole celebration. Need more units like them in the future. We have Femboy Anxiety Issues says Luffy and Ace way too gimmicky beyond reason, and in my opinion fail as a New Year's legend for that. The gear change, YB commander requirements, 10 turn. I will say that the 10 turn heal stuff, additional damage stuff, not a fan of that at all. That is definitely a component of their unit design that is pretty badly organized, because you have to use certain characters in order to get them to work, and if you don't, then you just miss out on a lot of benefits, which really hurts. You prefer the New Year's Legends to be more straightforward, Zoro Sanji, New Year's Nami, etc. I do agree. I do agree with that. What they're saying here just makes complete sense, and I think that they could have done a better job with making the characters more beginner friendly, I guess. Whereas you compared to like Zoro Sanji last year, like the character wasn't very complex. It was pretty straightforward, just unga bunga damage with great utility in basically all components. Yamato was very tricky to use. Roger and Odin wasn't the best, but hey, Zoro Sanji carried, man. I guess that's also something to notice as well, is that typically the New Year's characters over the last few years, when they come out, they're like the best units of the year pretty much. Whereas you have to look at the characters this time around with Luffy, Sabo, and Ace. I can definitely see them releasing characters throughout 2024 that far exceed what this current batch does. Whereas everything last year, nothing really beat Zora and Sanji. Like, Zora and Sanji were just so OP. And even the year before that, right, with characters like New Year's Nami, New Year's Robin, and Yamato versus Kaido, like, there were a lot of characters that came out that definitely superseded those units, but like Nami and Robin specifically, like those units carried throughout that entire year of like 2022, 2023, wherever they came out. So yeah, I just don't see the units from this New Year celebration beating out other units that come out this year. Unless if the units that come out this year are just not that good. I just don't see it. Blizzu says, I love the animations for the new Luffy and think they were pretty cool. He will say that the aesthetics for the Luffy were god tier. Special animations really good. The final tap looks fantastic as well. And of course, the motion action when you click on the character looks fantastic. We've got Rose in here, says a little disappointing, expecting something awesome like Zora and Sanji. Luffy is great, but hard to activate that 7x. Very, very difficult to activate. Sabo is meh. I feel like for the casual player, Sabo is definitely not that exciting. But if you really break it down and go into it, like Sabo, I think is going to be ending up being pretty valuable, I think. Ace is great for that power-up abilities for the Whitebeard Pirates, but max switch turns are super high. Very good point. Yeah, I know Stump mentioned it earlier, or someone mentioned it earlier, but getting Ace and Whitebeard into their dual form is very difficult to do, because they only transform into their dual form when you activate their super switch ability, so that can really hurt the unit overall, because yeah, they don't have like any other way to transform into their dual form. The only way that they do it is via their super switch, because for some reason they don't do it in their special, which is both a positive and a negative. Like, there are positives to not becoming the dual unit when you activate the special, because you can get a lot of cool things out of that, like using the special, and then on the next turn you can switch if you want. There are benefits to it, but there's also drawbacks to only having it in the super switch as well. So very, very weird one, especially if you try and use them as a captain, because you need to get their combined captain for the higher damage. And you'll only get the higher damage when you activate their super switch, which is 8 switches, which is pretty harsh. So I think overall, as we move on throughout the year, I actually do think Sabo will see the most play, mainly because of the utility. Because he's got a great EX super that's really, really easy to activate as a sub. Either use 8 specials or have 2 of the following units, and Luffy's one of them. You've got, I know that Nico Robin's there as well, so pretty accessible, I would say. And then the special ability with really good utility can also trigger a cerebral territory, which is also kind of clutch. And then like Luffy, I think Luffy does have a lot of potential, but it just comes down to how easy it will be to trigger this Gear 5 ability. Like in high damage content like Super Boss, the thing is, we have so many different teams that can achieve like 1 trillion damage. Is this character really even needed in those squads? Probably not. He is a rainbow captain at the end of the day, which definitely helps. The units I felt were disappointing. I think that they've restricted the new units too much, something I wouldn't want to see as New Year's units. Yeah, it probably should have been a little bit more generic. Gear 5 Luffy, way too restrictive in enchantment Gear 5, as strong as it may be. But as you said in one of your videos, yeah, I totally agree with that. So we've got Knight says, honestly was expecting less rewards and gems. Yep, consider me surprised. If the new Sabo gets more content to be utilized in forward, then I think he's going to be most solid all-round New Year's unit. Yeah, I do think Sabo will probably be the surprising one. I think he's going to be the most useful throughout the year. I think Ace and Whitebeard won't see as much play as we think, mainly because we just don't have any good Whitebeard Pirate Commanders. If we get high tier level modern releases of Whitebeard Pirate Commanders, Ace and Whitebeard might be the best unit, like, just in the game. But as for right now, probably not. We'll have to see. Whitebeard Ace is great direction. Fingers crossed there's more coming. So Fulcron says they hit hard, but they don't counter a lot of gimmicks. The one Whitebeard counters is hard to deal with. Yep. During the celebration, it felt good, though, since we didn't have to counter many debuffs. Yep, Luffy has a shit design. I mean, I wouldn't say Luffy has a shit design. I think the design is good, but the execution of that design isn't great, is what I would say. Spartan says they decreased the value of New Year's units. Roger is still very good. Let's talk about the New Year's Legends. All of them were good, but they have somehow managed to worsen them. Luffy is fun, but let's be honest, he isn't that easy to use. The only one I like the most is Ace and Whitebeard. So we can see a common thread in this community post where a lot of people don't like the overall designs of the units aside from Whitebeard and Ace. But even that, like Whitebeard and Ace, they're really, really fun to use, but they're not great. They're not like knocking the door down of top 5, even top 10 of the best units in the game. They don't have great utility. They have some pretty decent damage, but they're just like different. Because if you abuse those different characters on your squad, you can get some really unique abilities to activate. So Reformed says, Sabo is the one I like the most. Easy to use, utility, great EX special, easy requirements, class advantage is niche at the moment, correct. Whitebit and Ace need more commanders, yeah, 100%. Too early to draw conclusions, but for now, Luffy, as often happens, focuses on big numbers. Yep, correct. So we see people are just posting like multiple posts here, so let's see what the rest of his posts will be. Sabo has good utility, very accessible requirements in general, has excellent support. Yeah, his support, I forgot about that. It's actually cracked how good it is. And then his support in Rumble for in cerebral teams. It's just the weakness class. It all comes down to how positive or how often that's going to be. And White Bananas on paper are the most interesting in terms of mechanics, team building, and adaptability based on the content, but it needs new fighter powerhouse Whitebit commanders. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, hit the nail on the head with that one. Luffy genuinely sucks for hard-hitting content because of his stupid EX super conditions. Being just Straw Hats for such a strong EX super is so damn annoying. But aside from that, I like that the celebration, a bunch of free gems, and all I want from the game is increase the units for. Yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing as well, is like, the thing is while, like, a lot of people probably don't agree that, you know, the celebration could have been better in some capacity. But some people are complaining about the Luffy. I just think that Luffy has so much potential upside because at this current point in time, there are no other characters that can achieve a multiplier of nearly a 7 times attack boost. Like, that's legitimately crazy. I kind of talked about it on one of my streams when this was kind of releasing. But, like, the jump from, like, 4x captains to 5x captains was a big deal. Because remember, like, you got 2 4x captains, that's 16 times multiplier, not accounting for other things like ships and stuff like that. And then if you go from, like, a 5x captain with 2 5x captains, that's 25x. So going from, like, the 2 4x's to the 2 5x's, you're jumping from 16 to 25. And then you're going from your 5x's to your 6x's, going from 25x to 36x. Now you gotta imagine, 7 times captain going from 36 times to 49 times. Like, that is such a big deal in terms of damage. Now, all of that being said, damage cap does still exist in Superboss Kizuna. Well, it exists everywhere, but mainly it's going to be in Superboss Kizuna where it's actually a big deal. So, we're going to be getting these captains that are so strong, but it actually doesn't even matter because the damage cap exists and it will just nerf everything that we try to attempt in these high damage content. So, realistically, it is kind of like diminishing returns when it gets to a certain point. Yes, it does make some certain content easier. Like if you have like a 7 times captain going up against content, yeah, that's going to make it a little bit easier because you will need less multipliers on your specials with attack boost, or boost, etc. because your captains are so high. But again, there are diminishing returns with that damage cap where like it gets to a point where it doesn't even matter. Like the damage is so high, it just doesn't even matter at this point. It's actually just focused on utility. And that's why captains that have utility are so much more valuable in so much more content compared to just unga bunga damage like what this Luffy is focused on. But I do think that people are still underrating how good the fact that his special ability can apply up to a 3 times increased damage taken. Like, there is no other character in the game that applies an increased damage taken that high. You gotta think how crazy that actually is. There is obviously a use case where he could potentially get a 3 times increased damage taking conditional boost as well. And if you can get that together, it's cracked. Plus, he does have his EX Super, which can grant a 1.69 times weakness status because it's a 1.3 and it becomes 1.69 if they have increased damage taken. So Luffy just applying all of this by himself is like absurdly strong. Plus, he's got territory. It is only for fighter characters, which is kind of the downside because you need to have a full team of fighters in order to abuse that, which does kind of hurt. But I just think there is so much upside to this Luffy. Sabo, we kind of talked about. Very, very interesting unit. I think that his utility is going to help him in the long run. And then Whitebit and Ace, until we get more Whitebit Pirate Commanders that are both fighter and powerhouse, then I just feel like he's kind of dead for now. But that's the way that I see it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video though. Let me know your thoughts and opinions about the whole celebration of the New Year's units down below in the comment section. Really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.